Are you the quantum mechanics?
Yes, we are the Quantum Mechanics, the paranormal podcast for the believers, the doubters, and everybody in between.
We are indeed. Well, Ben, I think we should just get into it today. Got quite a lot to go through.
Yeah, perfect. Straight down to action.
Straight down to action, that's what we like. I was thinking, Ben, the last couple of episodes I've done have been a bit, I don't know, mind-bending, really, haven't they?
They have involved the need to understand quite a lot of science, basically.
Yeah, I've covered retroactive precognition and then asked if we have free will, which we've had quite a good debate on that, especially on YouTube. Lots of people going in on the episode and giving different points of view, which has been great.
Well, that is the first episode that I have seen that someone actually posted on LinkedIn.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, I know.
That's great.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Well, anyway, it feels like it's been a bit mind-bending, so I thought we needed a bit of a break, Ben. So today, I'm going to take us on a cruise.
You did promise us a break from that. So is this like we get a sun lounger, we get a glass of something delicious,
Yeah.
we see the sea?
More food than we could even possibly eat.
But this is a paranormal podcast.
Well, it does turn out that cruise ships can be a bit of a hotbed of paranormal activity, and some ships can claim the title of being cursed.
There is a long legend, there's a long history of cursed ships. It feels like if something goes repeatedly wrong, people go, that's cursed.
Yeah.
We're never quite sure who put the curse on or why.
Or why, yeah. No, there's never usually a backstory about why it goes on.
No, that's cursed. That's also cursed. Yeah, okay.
But considering we're going cruising, I felt I needed to find out something about it. Should we have some random facts?
Of course we should have some random facts.
I love a random facts. Well, let's start with, can you believe this? Over 30 million people travel by cruise ship each year.
That is way more than I would have imagined.
It's huge.
30 million. That is like, what, a third of the UK population?
Yeah. I mean, worldwide, obviously. Yeah. The largest cruise ship in the world is the Icon of the Seas. When fully booked, it carries 7,600 passengers and 2,350 crew.
I have seen the pictures of that because that fascinates me, particularly when it's compared to like other ships, like for example the Titanic, which is like a rowing boat. In comparison,
yeah.
It's absolutely enormous, but I don't know whether that is more scary or less scary because I don't really like boats. I don't really like high seas. I worry.
Right.
In a boat that size, are you kind of immune to that stuff? I wonder.
Yeah, probably got big stabilisers, I guess, but yeah, probably more if you can't really stop it or move it out of the way or something.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Well, this ship has 7 swimming pools. This is nuts. Over 40 restaurants, bars, and lounges on board.
40 restaurants. Well, I suppose for 7,000 people, yeah, that's not overplaying, yeah.
Do you know over 20,000 ice cream cones are eaten each week on a cruise ship?
When you said random
I told you they're random.
Yep, okay, 20,000 cornets, right, okay.
I'm assuming there's some ice cream to go with that rather than just the ice cream cones.
Very dry.
Well, I guess that amount of ice cream and ice cream cones contributes to the fact that it's not unheard of for a cruise goer to put on a pound in weight a day. That's over 3 kilos a week. 3 kilos a week.
That's like me in lockdown, and then me after lockdown, and me.
Well, they don't close, do they? They're kind of, you got breakfast.
That's right.
You got lunch. There's like pizza places. You could eat food 24 hours a day if you wanted.
I remember my dad, who is in his 80s now, he texted me last year. They were at they weren't. So they were at a prepaid resort. Right. I don't know where, somewhere like Greece or something, where all the restaurants, you could eat whatever you wanted. Right. And they were open 24 hours a day. And he texted me, it's 4:30 in the morning and I'm having a curry because I can. Yeah.
Yeah. I bet he put on 3 kilos that week.
Oh, yeah.
This next ship, it's become a bit of a fascination since I found out about it. There is a residential cruise ship called The World, where people basically live on board ship and then travel around.
Oh, yes. So instead of going into an old people's home, you can go on the ship.
Yeah, there are 150 families on board, so I don't think it's just old people.
Oh, right.
They span 20 different countries. It's basically a floating community travelling the world's oceans. I'm sure you might have to have a fair bit of cash to be able to buy. So you basically, I think you buy a spot on it. And from my little reading, I think you can then almost like a timeshare, you can rent it out to other people and stuff like that and family. But yeah, if you wanted, you basically could live on board and it travels around. I saw photos of it down the Amalfi Coast and then you go somewhere else.
It's not a bad life, is it?
Yeah, because you get, basically there's food, you've got chefs and people like that. It's just like being on a smaller than a massive cruise ship, I guess, but it's the same principle.
Well, if you've got a house, it's the sort of thing I feel like you wouldn't want to be very old, like infirm on that, because that wouldn't be any fun. But maybe for like a couple of years in your retirement, rent out your house, go on that, live there for a couple of years. I think that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
But if it's haunted, I might be tempted to stay.
Yeah, I couldn't find any hauntings around that one.
Oh, okay.
But maybe what contributes to the haunting is most large cruise ships have a morgue on board.
I did know that, and it does make sense, I suppose.
Yeah, but very few have a dentist.
Oh, really? Well, okay, that...
So if you get... Usually, I think some do now, but traditionally, if you had terrible toothache, you'd kind of get some painkillers and have to wait until you hit the next port.
Ooh.
But if you died, you'd be fine.
You'd be fine. Yeah, because I've cracked a tooth, and that comes unexpected. Oh, and that's very unpleasant. Yeah. You do need a dentist quite quickly in that case.
Yeah.
Okay. Well... I'll be very careful. Very careful. I'll just have soup.
Well, they were my random facts. Maybe I should rename that segment "Very Random Facts."
Yes. Peter's very random facts. Well, at least they were all about cruising.
Well, shall we set sail into paranormal waters?
Yes.
And I must warn listeners, there are some gruesome stories on this week's episode, so you might want to be careful who you're listening to with it, because there are some tales coming up.
I'll put the dog out.
We'll start with what has been described as the world's most haunted cruise ship. You mentioned it last week, I think, on the Extra Scoop.
Oh, the QM2?
The Queen Mary. Yeah. So the first one, not the second one.
Oh, it's the first, right, okay.
Queen Mary first set sail on her maiden voyage in 1936, leaving the port of Southampton. Now, compared to the modern-day cruise ship, certainly the one we talked about in the Random Facts, as you pointed out about the Titanic, this one is relatively small, but it still had capacity for over 2,000 passengers. And it was the old classic like the Titanic. You had upper class, middle class and lower class.
I've seen videos of that thing. It's still quite well appointed. I mean, it has an indoor swimming pool and all sorts of... It's got a banquet room.
Well, I'll come on to it because you can still stay on it.
Yeah.
Along with paranormal activity and strange phenomena, one of the reasons the Queen Mary has such a haunted reputation is connected to how many people have died on board. This bit's quite funny. When I was researching, numbers vary about exactly how many people have died. In fact, in one article I read, Ben, in the Express newspaper, the number of deaths was either 47 people, 50 or 49 people. Well, that was within the first paragraph of the article. They got it wrong 3 times, basically, or not consistent.
Oh, okay. It's a bit like the Roll Right Stones. You can't count them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Shall we settle on 50 deaths?
50.
Around
I love the way
50.
They went 47, 50, 49. Yeah.
I think it was different copywriters because the headline said 49 people had died. The first line of the article said 47. And then later, almost saying it's unbelievable that 50 people have died.
Okay, so we're going to settle on 50.
Well, I think around 50.
Around 50. Okay, go for it.
Let's have a look at some of the ghosts that are said to haunt the Queen Mary. Now, the first ghost is said to be that of a former crew member called John Pedder. On the 10th of July, 1966, Pedder was working in the engine room when the captain ordered an emergency drill.
Had to hang a picture, I imagine.
Yeah. Pedder, rushing to get out of the engine room in time, was crushed to death by a watertight door.
Oh.
He was just 18 years old.
So why was he... What happened? Why was he crushed by it?
I think what happens is when you do one of those drills, almost like a scene in Star Trek, you know, where they've got to get out before the warp core goes. I think it's a bit like that. I think the doors would close.
Oh, it's automatic.
Yeah. So he had to run to get out of there, didn't quite make it in time and got crushed by the door.
Wow.
And it was a drill. It wasn't even a...
That's okay. That's awful. So that's the first recorded death.
Yeah, and since his death, passengers on board reported seeing a ghostly figure of a young man in white overalls in the engine room area, and others have reported feeling an eerie presence there. Some have even reported the apparition approaching them and asking them if they had a wrench.
Actually speaking.
Yeah.
Oh, imagine being stuck on the other side without a wrench. Like,
Yeah.
I don't mean that glibly, but so many ghosts seem to have something that they are trying to, some unfinished business.
Yeah.
You know, tell that person I love them, or,
Yeah.
you know, where is my husband? But where's my wrench? That just makes it even...
You kind of go, is the ghost just trying to get out of the engine room and
Right.
he's trapped there forever?
Oh, I see. Yes, trying to help himself.
Yeah, I'm kind of... I don't know that for sure,
No,
obviously, but
no.
that
Don't want to
kind
put
of,
words in his mouth.
yeah. Well, another area of the Queen Mary also has a haunted reputation. It's a bit like Stephen King's done a few stories like this, like in The Shining, you know, Room 217 in the book,
Yes.
or it's actually Room 237 in the film. A little aside, when I was like, why was it different in the book to the film? Turns out that Kubrick changed the number of the haunted room in The Shining to 237 because the hotel they filmed at had a room 217 and the hotel owners were worried no one would want to stay there after the film came out.
Is that right? Well, they should have got... It would be the other way around. People would be clamouring to stay in that room.
Well, anyway, back to the Queen Mary. Their haunted room is stateroom B340.
Catchy.
Yeah. Now, the backstory to this is a man died in mysterious circumstances in stateroom B340 late in 1948. Bit of a thing that he was probably murdered seems to be the backstory in the room. 20 years later, staff on the Queen Mary rushed to stateroom B340 after hearing a woman's piercing scream. The woman, who was shaking with fear, recounted her story. That while sleeping in the room on her own, she felt her bed sheets being pulled off by an unseen force. Oh, that'd freak you out, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
She awoke to see the apparition of a man standing at the end of her bed. When she began screaming and staff on board started banging on her door, the apparition vanished into thin air in front of her eyes.
So many times apparitions are fiddling with the bed sheets.
Yeah,
and it's weird, isn't it? I mean, presumably it's an attention-seeking thing.
Yeah.
But why wait till you fall asleep? Why not just, as soon as you get into the bedroom, hello?
Yeah. It is odd, isn't it?
It is really strange. You know, the majority of stories you hear, and it's not just ghosts. I mean, we're not doing aliens this week, but so many times when you have an alien abduction story, that people feel themselves either being levitated in the bed or the bed covers lifting off, or they wake up and they see an alien standing ominously at the end of the bed, you know, oh, hello. And it's like, why the bedroom?
I wonder whether what is actually going on is, in real life, they had a terrible experience with their partner always hogging the duvet. And this is what they're trying to get off their chest before they move over to the other side.
Yeah, I mean, they should perhaps have tried the spare room.
Yeah. That's a double haunting.
I said, yes, double haunting. If they just wake you up and go, stop snoring, I'm going the other room.
Well, since the incident with the woman waking up in the middle of the night and screaming, other guests have reported hearing knocking on the door of stateroom B340 in the middle of the night. Others reported the bathroom lights switching themselves on and off. That's kind of classic poltergeist activity, isn't it?
Yeah.
Maids have reported taps in the bathroom turning on by themselves. Back to the bed sheets being pulled off and messed up after they had just made the bed in the room. So you got this thing where the maids just made it perfectly, maybe gone in to the bathroom because the tap's running. When they come out, the whole bed's been messed up again.
Yeah, I've seen videos, you know, like the Nukes Top 10 type of things, where maids have gone into hotel rooms and either the beds have been completely messed up, or that thing about poltergeist that is super creepy where they stack stuff. There's a video I've seen where like literally everything in the room is stacked on top of the bed,
Oh, that's
and
weird.
yeah, and that I think that idea of like messing up the bed sheets I could cope with. Stacking stuff is probably a step too far.
It's making me think of the original story, the real story of Annabelle the doll. That thing where they'd leave for college, and it'd be in like the living room, and they'd come back, and it'd be on the bed in the bedroom, and nobody had been in there. You know.
Yeah. Well, Guy Lyon Playfair wrote a piece about poltergeists before he died, so it's probably 20 odd years ago now. But he was talking about the very specific behaviour. One of the things is the sound of like marbles dropping, which is particularly unusual. And he makes a point that it doesn't follow the same physics pattern of sound as a real marble should. It's almost like it's played in reverse. And the other thing is this precarious stacking. So it's like they're wanting to prove to you their existence by putting a chair on top of another chair in a very unlikely way, a way that a human wouldn't be able to do it. So I wonder whether that messing up the bed sheets is less cry for notice me. I wonder whether that is literally like, oh, I'm going to get into bed, and is mimicking some sort of behaviour that they had when they were alive.
Although if you're a maid, you'd probably prefer it the other way round, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Thanks for making the bed. You'd be more appreciative. Just take it around with you every room you went to.
Do you know we've never done an episode on tidying helpful ghosts?
Yeah, that's really, yeah.
Because there must be some.
Yeah. We did a friendly ghost once, didn't we? But yeah. Oh, that's one to look into.
Yeah. Okay.
Helpful ghosts.
Helpful ghost. Yeah.
Well, maids on board the Queen Mary have also reported another strange encounter in the Mauritania room in 1989. Now, according to the reports, 3 maids witnessed a man sitting on a chair on the dance floor. When another maid arrived to assist them, the man mysteriously vanished before their eyes again, leaving the maids startled and bewildered. He just sat in the middle of the dance floor.
Yeah, don't do that.
Guests have also reported seeing a number of ghosts at the first-class swimming pool. A young woman in a tennis skirt, a woman in an old wedding gown with a little boy in a suit, and a little girl in a blue and white dress. They're all pretty scary things to see, I would think.
I presume there is a tennis court on board.
Yeah.
So that just feels like previous residents. But why would they be
stone
haunting?
tape theory, that.
Yeah, it is. But is there any record of somebody playing tennis and dying?
No.
It's like maybe they're coming back to, well, like you say, it's either stone tape because they had maybe such a brilliant time there and their energy was so nice. Infused that they did it.
Yeah.
I mean...
Or a time slip.
Or a time slip, yeah. I think it must be quite exciting at any point in history to be in a freshwater swimming pool on a ship.
Yeah.
That's quite an extraordinary thing. So I wonder whether people were like so amazed by it that, you know, it attaches them. I'm sort of drawing long conclusions here that probably shouldn't happen, but it's interesting.
I could be making this up, but I think when I was doing the research about the Queen Mary, if not the first ship to have a swimming pool on, was one of the first cruise ships. But in my mind, I'm thinking the first, but I'd have to check my notes. But yeah. Well, given its paranormal pedigree, it's not surprising that after the Queen Mary finished sailing the Seven Seas, rather than being scrapped, it was turned into a floating hotel, which still exists today. Paranormal investigators and haunted thrill seekers can spend nights there or even tour it. So I think they offer like a 1-hour tour, a 4-hour tour. You can go and visit that room, which I don't think is used for guests anymore. It's just used. Maybe they've dressed it a bit so it looks a bit
I've seen
paranormal.
this on YouTube, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you could argue maybe some of these stories have been, you know, little boys in suits and people in wedding dresses could be a bit exaggerated maybe to help that side of the business, but who knows? I think it's a general hotel most of the time, and then they do paranormal stuff as well.
But am I right in saying that it was also used during the war to bring servicemen home?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
So that could be another reason. Is there any cases that we know of there where servicemen who maybe have been injured, did they pass away? Are there ghosts there?
I didn't come across that, but I didn't heavily research it, so I don't know,
Okay.
is the honest answer. Well, if you want to go there, it's moored in Long Beach in California. They run all kinds of tours from, the 1 hour encounter tours, spend the night on board. It's basically a static floating hotel now. Well, from the Queen Mary, with its reputation for being plagued with ghosts, to another more modern cruise ship that was considered cursed. We're talking about the Carnival Ecstasy. Now, the Ecstasy took its maiden voyage on April the 2nd, 1991. Over the years, the ship had a number of disasters on board, adding to the legend that it is a cursed ship. One of the most serious was in 2015. Have a listen to this news report from the Time.
These are photos from a Fun in the Sun Christmas getaway for Matt Davis and his family. But there's one image he says he'll never get out of his head.
No, that can't be right. No! That's not possible.
To look and see the elevator with just blood coming down like a sheet and not stopping. It was a real-life scene of The Shining.
Matt and his wife Susan say time stood still. It sounded like a rainstorm, and they could smell the blood. Showing me cell phone images, telling me they were heading to dinner on the 10th floor of the Carnival Ecstasy Sunday night when they saw the horrifying scene.
One of the crew people from Carnival was trying to get people to go back towards the restaurant.
Come inside, please.
As the doors struggled to open, the couple tells me a man was inside.
We ran through the blood that was coming down.
45 minutes later, the area was sectioned off with a sign by the elevator reading, "Sorry, but I'm not working at the moment." Matt tells me he was still uneasy and looking for answers. A waiter told him an electrician got hurt, and later a Carnival supervisor told him he passed away.
Man was working on the elevator up here.
A crew member, somebody was inside behind that wall when the elevator came down, and I don't know what happened in there, but something terrifying happened.
I reached out to Miami-Dade police, who are investigating the death. A spokesperson tells me by email the victim is a 66-year-old electrician aboard the ship named Jose Sandoval Opazo. He died Sunday night. The cause still under investigation.
And I couldn't wait to get off the ship. I just wanted to get off.
Gosh, that's quite a thing.
It's really tragic, isn't it? Really sad event.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that sort of thing isn't confined to cruise ships, but there's something about that makes it feel like that tragic event would be sort of almost heightened by being in such an enclosed environment. And I don't just mean the lift shaft there, I mean the ship itself.
Yeah.
So that happened aboard the Ecstasy.
It did. It happened when an electrician was working in the broken elevator. The ship had disabled the elevator's safety mechanism while the man was working. Yeah, and the elevator basically came down on him, killing him instantly.
Goodness me.
Yeah. Well, that was not the first incident that contributed to the cruise ship's cursed reputation. That occurred around 15 years earlier in 1998, with 2,565 passengers and 916 crew members on board. The Ecstasy departed port from Miami, Florida on July 20th, 1998, and they were heading for Key West. What everyone thought would be an idyllic cruise holiday turned into something more akin to a cross between the Titanic and the Towering Inferno. Shortly after 5 p.m, a fire erupted in the main laundry room. It quickly took hold, spreading through the ventilation system to the aft mooring dock. Flames then ignited mooring lines and filled the ship with intense heat and smoke. Next, the ship lost propulsion and steering while attempting to reach an anchorage. The captain had no choice but to call the US Coast Guard for assistance. 6 tugboats responded to the call for help, and with their help and the onboard firefighters, it took nearly 5 hours to put out the flames. 14 crew members and 8 passengers sustained injuries, one deemed serious due to a pre-existing health condition. I mean, given the severity of that incident, Ben, it could have been a much, much worse. So nobody died, but there were a number of injuries, and I guess from smoke inhalation and other stuff. Well, there was a full investigation carried out by the National Transportation Safety Board, the NTSB, as I'm going to call them now, determined that the fire was caused by unauthorised welding activity.
Unauthorised welding activity?
I'll tell you what, I'm going to do a bit of unauthorised welding. That's what I'm going to do, yeah, by crew members in the laundry room.
Well, that's certainly not a place you want to do welding.
Yeah, it ignited a large accumulation of lint in the ventilation system, and that's how the fire spread.
Right, yeah.
The investigation highlighted Carnival Cruise Line's failure to maintain the laundry exhaust duct safely as a critical factor.
I knew that would be it.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I found a whole academic paper on this. I found the original reports. So all this is from the investigation that I just kind of went through, because you can read it in kind of articles, but I thought no, go to the source. Additionally, there was an absence of automatic fire suppression systems on the aft mooring deck, and a lack of means to control the spread of smoke and fire through the ventilation ducts, which contributed to the extensive damage. And boy, Ben, it was extensive damage, with the cost exceeding $17 million.
Wowzers.
Yeah.
The cost of one lobster meal, I would imagine.
Yeah, exactly. With the cheeky Chablis.
Yeah.
So following the investigation, the NTSB made numerous recommendations to various entities, including the US Coast Guard and multiple cruise lines, focusing on enhancing fire detection and suppression systems on mooring decks, implementing emergency call systems in passenger staterooms and cabin crews. So I think people who've been on modern day cruises, all the messages travel everywhere now, where in the past they didn't. Improve training and protocols for emergency situations to ensure effective passenger and crew accounting, which slightly worries you, doesn't it? Even at school they had a register. Carnival Cruise Lines revisited its safety management systems to prevent unauthorised welding. There's a relief.
Yeah.
We're all pleased about that. They improved emergency response measures. Improvements included installation of lint screens and modification to existing ships for better fire safety. Thankfully. Well, that could have been a huge disaster, but that's on the same ship.
Yeah.
That's the Ecstasy a few years before the
Right,
lift incident.
okay.
So, yeah, two major incidents with the Ecstasy. Massive fire in 1989 and the horrific death of the electrician in the elevator in 2015. Now, there is another case associated with this cruise ship, that of the tragic demise of David Richardson, who took his own life on board. Richardson had been the victim of quite an infamous and despicable racial hate crime. So he was a student. He attended a house party north of Houston, Texas, where two students who attended the same school as him beat, tortured and sexually assaulted him while shouting racial slurs. The attack lasted 5 hours, and his resulting injuries, they were just horrific when you read about it. It's terrible. The two teenage perpetrators were eventually convicted and sentenced to a minimum of 30 years in prison before they could be eligible for parole. I think they'll probably spend a lot longer in there as well. Tragically, the victim of this terrible ordeal took his own life, aged just 18, jumping off the deck of the cruise ship Ecstasy in 2007. So sad, that.
It really is. That suggestion that this ship is cursed, is the idea that drove him the last bit, or is he just associated with the ship?
It's almost, I think it's because of the association, these three major events.
Right, okay.
I think it's the fact that the fire changed safety for the whole cruise industry. That's a big thing. That tragic death, because it was connected with a high-profile case, and the fact that elevator incident is something straight out of The Shining. You can see why the ship got this reputation, right? Mm-hmm. Well, the Ecstasy was decommissioned in 2022. Its new home is beached in Turkey, waiting to be scrapped. So it's lying on a beach somewhere, waiting to be taken apart.
I always find it sad when they pull ships apart. I know they only have a certain amount of active lifetime, but 1992, when it was built, to me feels like it's a few weeks old.
Yeah. Well, you think how much it must have cost. Well, if they did $17 million worth of repairs after the fire.
Yeah.
God knows what it cost in the first
Yes,
place.
exactly. Yes.
So the rumours of cruise ships being cursed by tragedy is something the cruise industry would rather forget. When it comes to hauntings on the ocean waves, cruise companies, I think, are beginning to embrace the paranormal a bit more, Ben. There are a number of ghost and paranormal themed cruises, especially around Halloween time. I found this interesting article about Carnival Cruise ambassador and senior cruise director John Heald, who I'd not heard of before, but apparently he's a bit of a character in the cruise world. So the piece was from March this year, reported by Lisa Poirot, what a great name.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, of cruisehive.com. And it sees Heald opening up about potential hauntings on board the cruise line ships, even sees him cracking some horrific puns, Ben.
Oh, come on, we can't really point the finger.
Oh, you wait till you
Oh,
hear
all right,
these.
then, go on then.
So the article is titled Carnival Cruise Line Addresses Ghostly Encounters at Sea. It says, have you ever felt a chill down your spine while cruising the open seas, or thought you glimpsed a shadow flitting through your stateroom? You're not alone. Recently, a Carnival Cruise Line guest reached out to its brand ambassador, John Heald, asking if he, the cruise line, have any stories to share about onboard hauntings. In a message to Heald, the passenger said she and her husband sailed on a P&O cruise, the Australia's Pacific Adventure, in February 2025, just before it was absorbed into Carnival Cruise Line's operations. The couple revealing a cabin number had been hidden by Heald, so it didn't scare others away from booking it. They said they absolutely believed this room to be haunted and wanted to know if others had any experiences. Here comes. In typical Heald style, his response was filled with ghastly puns, the article says. Heard says, I remember when I was on the Carnival Breeze that myself and a few department heads were conducting a séance. We made contact with the founder of a bottled water company, but that was probably because we were using a Fiji board.
What?
There's another one. Then later that night, we contacted the long-lost spirit of the first plumber on Carnival Cruise Line ship Mardi Gras, he added. That was probably because we were using a Luigi board.
I quit.
You've got to admit that's worse than our puns.
Oh, but they're not
They
even.
don't know your puns.
I don't even know what they are. I don't like this man. Don't quote him.
Well, he got serious and asked other former passengers to share their stories if they had them. Oh, every Carnival cruise I've been on, my room has been haunted, shared a passenger. You would leave the room and the towels would magically contort themselves into animals. It was crazy.
No.
I think that's based on what they do to
That is
the
exactly
towels.
what they do. Yes,
Okay,
yes.
that's the thing, is it?
Yes, they're using it as this is basically marketing collateral for how great their room service is.
This next line is really a contradiction in terms. While generating a lot of laughs, many respondents actually experienced real moments that caused hairs on their arms to stand. One guest said her adjoining cabin on Deck 7 of Carnival Magic was definitely haunted. She said lights flashed, room phones rang, and there was a lot of banging. Even maintenance couldn't pinpoint what was happening. Then the real terror happened. I was getting dressed and was sitting on the bed. My hubs was on the couch.
She said hubs.
Hubs, I know. From behind me, I heard a groan. I looked at my hubs and said, was that you? He said, nope, that noise came from right behind you. After hightailing it out of there and telling guest services they thought the cabin was haunted, the couple were moved to Deck 9 and didn't have any further experiences. It's interesting.
That's quite compelling.
Yeah, that you've got enough to go, I can't stay in that room.
Yeah, that is interesting. Although it's hard to take her seriously if she calls Hubs Hubs.
Yeah, that is true.
Unless his name was Hubs.
Yeah, it might be.
And then he sounds like quite a rugged outdoorsman.
Yeah. Almost a rancher type.
Yeah. Hubs McBeard.
Yeah.
But
Hubs Coyote.
Hubs Coyote. That is coming on Netflix.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There's a a four-season
deal.
Yeah, in that. Is there?
Hubs Coyote, I think that's quite good. But what she's describing there, phones ringing, lights going on and off, that is, one would put that into sort of attempted communication by a spirit. That's not so much residual as active.
Well, another passenger on that same ship, doesn't say whether it was the same room, said his wife had a frightening occurrence as well. She saw a recently departed person she knew sitting on the bed. She first thought it was me, but I was asleep next to her, he wrote.
Oh.
That's... Ooh.
So did she realise that she knew that they were recently departed?
Yeah, she knew the person.
So it's not a crisis apparition?
No, it's...
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. Like, I suppose doubly unusual because that isn't... It's not like them coming to visit them in their own house. That's like coming to visit them, on obviously on a cruise ship, but I was going to say, like, while they're travelling. That's super interesting. Okay.
Well, plenty more passengers on this thread said they'd had some haunting encounters on board the Queen Mary that we mentioned earlier. So the ship built in 1930. It was the inspiration for Queen Mary 2. So, yeah, as we mentioned, it is like a hotel in Long Beach, California now, a floating hotel. I didn't realise this bit when I researched the first bit. It's also where many Carnival Cruise Line guests book to stay before they voyage on the Carnival Firenze, because they're in the same home port there. So you might arrive a day or two early, stay at the Queen Mary, which is a floating hotel, before you get your main cruise ship.
Right.
That ship definitely has creepy vibes, said one about Queen Mary. And another added her two sisters both had ghostly run-ins. One heard screaming that no one else did, which sounds a bit banshee-like. The other saw a person that seemed otherworldly. It was very eerie. It seems most...
That was Hubs Coyote, that was.
That was, yeah. It seems most passengers would surprisingly welcome a visit from a ghost while sailing with Carnival Cruise Line. In fact, many people suggested that cruise lines should host haunted cruises. I think they do.
They do, yeah.
No, actually, particularly around Halloween. I think Carnival don't.
Oh, okay.
They don't offer themed voyages, just themed nights, it said. So, yeah.
It feels like they've been speaking to the people at Muller Marketing and decided this was the way to go.
When I did a content warning at the start of this episode, it probably was more to do with the two hideous puns that came up.
Absolutely horrific. But I do think that idea... So in a lot of paranormal lore, we've come across sort of vehicles, and I mean like largely aircraft and now ships, where people, unexpected people turn up. You did one about an airline where the deceased captain of another airline becomes a passenger and keeps coming on board.
Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting because it's almost like they want to be part of something which is going on, and they're not. It shows that ghost isn't constrained to haunting a particular vehicle. It's kind of like they choose to come on board a ship or a plane. And that does ask a question of like, so that person who said that they saw their ex-friend come on board, I mean, can it just be as simple as, oh, you're on a cruise, I'd quite like to have been on a cruise myself, and there's something about that. Is it like a homing signal, like, well, I'll go and see my friend Jean because she's on a cruise? Maybe ghosts can't just go, oh, I'll just go and see a random person on a cruise. Maybe it doesn't work that way. I don't know. It opens lots of questions.
Well, I also wondered I know we've talked previously about the idea of almost energy vampires, that it's something about the energy and feeding off the energy and emotions. I wonder if that's got something to do with it as well, because everybody... They're on holiday, right? You're on a floating holiday thing with the food's flowing, the alcohol's flowing, you've got entertainment, if you like that kind of thing. You know what I mean? There's so much, emotion around that I wonder if that's connected with it as well.
I think there probably is. And also, there's something, I wonder, because water obviously has lots of sacred connotations, rivers and such. There's even some cultures that worship them. In the old cultures in the UK, the Britons, for example, used to celebrate with rivers as a fertility symbol. And where I'm going with that is I wonder whether there's something unique about being on the water. Right. Maybe it acts as like an insulator to the rest of the world. So you sort of build up I don't know, the energy is a really, I hate that word because you go energy, what do you mean by energy? It's vibrations, what do you actually mean? But in the absence of knowing exactly what these things are, if you were able to say, oh, okay, so the presence of a vehicle on water enables spiritual energy to hang around, that might be a good hypothesis.
Yeah, and salt water.
Yeah, salt water, yeah.
Interesting. Maybe it's not surprising that ghost encounters do happen on cruise ships, as on average there are 200 deaths a year on a cruise ship. Not on each one, but on
no, but you got to look at the demographic.
Yeah, well, 23% of these deaths involve people falling, jumping, or being thrown overboard.
No.
Yeah, 23%.
23% of deaths? Mm-hmm. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. Being thrown overboard, that really got my attention. Alongside one of our Patreons pointed out when we were talking about doing this episode on our Patreon exclusive, that they said a cruise ship is said to be a good place to commit a murder. So I did a bit of digging. Once again, funny where this research takes you on this podcast. I came across a blog by Jim Walker, published on the Walker and O'Neill Maritime Lawyers website.
They sound like a musical duo.
Yeah, Walker and O'Neill's. Walker and O'Neill's Maritime Lawyers. But the title of the blog post is "A Cruise Ship the Perfect Place to Commit a Crime?" First published in 2017. Walker writes, earlier I mentioned, this was in another blog he'd done, the recent disappearance of a young Chinese woman from the MSC Magnifica. It appears that she may have been a murder victim, according to the police in Italy who are investigating the case. If this is true, this is hardly the first time that a cruise passenger has been killed at sea. Cruise passenger Karen Roston was thrown overboard by her husband during an Admiral cruise vacation. He was later convicted of the crime. Mindy Jordan went overboard from an NCL cruise ship when she went on vacation with her husband, reportedly with an abusive and violent background. Then there's the case of George Smith. Of course, it's perhaps the clearest example of a crime at sea. After he was reportedly thrown overboard by a man who was also sailing on the Royal Caribbean Brilliance of the Seas as a passenger, he reportedly gave Mr. Smith a paragliding lesson without a parachute. I'm assuming that's a metaphor rather than an actual thing. A Chinese cruise passenger murdered his wife by pitching her overboard during a cruise aboard the Macau Success. He falsely claimed that his wife had taken her own life. A drunken passenger killed his wife during a cruise on the Carnival Elation to Mexico. A lawyer was arrested for allegedly strangling and throwing his wife off an Italian cruise ship several years ago. A woman from Vancouver, Canada, Fabina Armani, was cruising aboard the Bahamas Celebration cruise ship, disappeared under mysterious circumstances during a cruise with her boyfriend. There are many others who met with foul play on cruise ships, and this includes the cruise as well. A Brazilian crew member working on board the MSC Musica was strangled to death by her boyfriend. 23-year-old Amy Lindy Bradley disappeared from Royal Caribbean's Rhapsody of the Seas under highly suspicious circumstances where it appears she was abducted.
Oh my goodness. Can you be abducted on a ship though?
I guess when you get to
or
port.
Back to a cat. Oh, yeah. I see. Right, yeah.
I mean, the list goes on here. He said other young, healthy and seemingly happy individuals have disappeared from cruise ships, with the cruise lines wildly speculating that they probably took their own lives, like that of Denisa Markowska and Angela Faliva. A murder investigation was opened after a 53-year-old woman went overboard from the Costa Fortuna. A young woman, Jennifer Ellis Seitz, disappeared over the rails of her cabin, resulting in the FBI investigating the conduct of her husband when other passengers commented on what they considered his highly strange behaviour. The FBI eventually declined the case after finding no evidence of foul play. It was the mystery, he says, the mysterious disappearance of Marian Carver from the Celebrity Mercury and the resulting cover-up by the cruise line, which motivated her father, Ken Carver, to create the International Cruise Victims Organisation. Several lawmakers have asked whether a cruise ship is the perfect place to commit a crime, largely because of the jurisdiction nightmares. So you might be in
international
waters or in different countries with different rules.
But surely the ship, would it not carry the laws of the country it's registered in?
No, I was on a ship once and there was a casino and I was playing blackjack or something in the casino and we were getting near American waters and they said, we're going to have to close now because we're travelling into American waters and we can't gamble. We can only do it in international waters.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
It says that also the cruise industry is quick to label disappearances as people taking their own lives, even when the facts suggest otherwise. Mick Driscoll, editor of Cruise Week, a cruise publication, was recently quoted saying, "Most overboards to date have been people taking their own lives." But he offered no statistical evidence to support this inaccurate claim, according to the author. In fact, the majority of disappearances involve highly intoxicated individuals who go over the rails. So I think the majority are accidentally people falling over. Whether you view this phenomenon as a result of reckless conduct by the passengers or irresponsibility of the cruise line in its serving guests to make a profit from the vast amount of alcohol sold during a cruise, there is no question that alcohol is involved in most disappearances from cruise ships. You can track the last 288 cases of overboards maintained by cruise expert Dr. Ross Klein and easily see that alcohol plays a significant role in most overboard cases. It also appears that a cruise is a perfect location for a murder, particularly when there are few automatic man-overboard cameras installed on ships, which would document and possibly deter criminal activity. And then there was an update, actually, on this article that I found at the end from November 2018. He said there have been 4 additional murders or murder attempts on cruise ships since we first published this article. In July of 2017, the FBI arrested a husband of a 39-year-old woman who was murdered on board the Emerald Princess. That was in Alaska. There's some other cases as well. I won't go into them all. The weirdest one that I came across, which wasn't in that article, but I found somewhere else, was that of Scott Roston and Karen Waltz. So they impulsively got married in Las Vegas in February 1988. The news came as a surprise to Karen's roommate and worried her mother, who didn't trust her new husband, Roston, and thought the two were moving way too fast. Misgivings aside, the newlyweds boarded the Sundance Cruise luxury ship and embarked on their honeymoon. 9 days after their wedding, Karen Waltz went overboard and drowned. Fellow passengers recounted that the couple had argued on board, with Roston intimidated his wife on several occasions. Roston had grown angry when he saw Karen eating sweets, and had been furious with her for eating with the wrong utensils. Roston first claimed, this is so bad, she'd been swept overboard by a strong wind, but wind velocity had been no more than 5 miles per hour at the time. Forensic evidence indicated Karen had been the victim of violence, including damage to her neck consistent with strangling, and cuts and scratches to Roston's face indicative of the desperate struggle. I guess what they call them defensive wounds, don't they? At this point, Roston changed his story, and it's almost like something out of a spy novel. He now claimed that his wife had been the victim of an attack by Israeli assassins.
What?
That was what he claimed. He further stated that he'd got the injuries to his face because he'd been knocked unconscious by the assassins before they killed her.
That all sounds like lies.
It didn't really work as a defence.
Right.
So first of all, you say she was blown off the balcony, and then you kind of say, no, it was assassins. He's sentenced to life in federal prison for her murder, and actually the sentence was reduced to 33 years on appeal, but I guess he's going to spend most of his life in prison. So yeah, maybe, so I think there's this fact about being in international waters makes it difficult. And I was thinking about it because, not all the rooms have them, do they? But a lot of them do have a balcony that you can sit on, and they're not particularly high. And I think they're basically saying, I don't know if it's true now, but certainly historically, there's no CCTV on those things. So, yeah, it would be quite easy. And then you wouldn't know, would you, for quite a while if somebody had disappeared or not, unless somebody reports it immediately.
No, but all of what you're saying there does mean that there's more of a reason for a haunting, because particularly if they are unsolved, then that goes back to what I was saying before, that the spirit has a need for a resolution.
Well, that's what I was thinking while I was reading the article, and I've not covered all the cases that he talks about in it, because they're kind of it's a bit list-like. But
yeah.
I started thinking, these are the ones that they know have been murders.
Yeah.
You know, how many... So if 23... So of all deaths, if 23% are people going overboard, I buy that a lot of them will be just people drunkenly falling off their balcony and maybe taking their own lives. But that still leaves a large chunk that potentially could be murders.
Yes.
That, you know, and maybe the police go, well, there's just no way we can prove that.
I mean, you know, you could imagine a scenario where you commit the murder and then you plan to disappear at the next port. You could, I mean, obviously that would point the finger at you.
Yeah.
But if you do it and they aren't overboard, it's a way of sort of even faking your own death. Potentially. I'm sure there'll be people who say, well, no, because you have to check in and out and stuff. But, you know, maybe that's very interesting. And I hadn't even considered the international waters aspect of it.
Yeah. Well, before we go, I wanted to feature a couple of more funny stories about people's experiences on cruises. So, none of these are particularly paranormal. The first involves a strange but not at all welcome coincidence for Metalbug7703, who posted, I got fired 2 weeks before the cruise I was going on. I got assigned dining with my ex-boss who just fired me.
Okay.
So he gets on the cruise ship, because you have to eat together, don't you? You can't eat on your own. He sits down and he's sat next to his ex-boss who'd fired him 2 weeks earlier, who was also on the same cruise.
Awful.
They then reinstated me to a different table with my ex-girlfriend from high school.
Amazing.
Oh, and I forgot to mention, this was on my honeymoon.
Oh, amazing.
I thought, wow, what are the chances? He said.
That's fantastic.
He said, I get that I'm 20 minutes from port and cruise often, but what are the odds? That's incredible, isn't it?
That is amazing.
We talk about, weird
coincidences. Yeah.
And finally, this story from Lowstick6746, which paints a rather disturbing picture of his special holiday cruise. He says, the one and only cruise I went on was hosting a huge clown convention. They went everywhere in clown makeup.
Oh, no.
Even in the pool. They dressed up fancy for dinner in evening gowns and tuxedos, but always in clown makeup.
No.
He said clowns were freaking everywhere and they were very drunk and obnoxious.
That makes it better.
We had extremely rough weather and things would slide off the table and such.
Their cars were falling apart.
Yeah. We had an old woman who was apparently a survivor of an ocean liner sinking when she was a little girl. But thanks to the drunk clowns, I couldn't hear what she was saying and what ship she'd been on.
Thanks to the drunk clowns.
And then he says... And then they played Titanic in the theatre as we were disembarking at the end of the cruise. The lights were on and the doors and windows were open so you couldn't see the screen, just hear the sound. It was during the sinking scene and all you could hear were people screaming and the ship being torn apart. It was making people nervous. Good thing it was when we were getting off the ship and not getting on it.
Who on earth would sanction that?
I know what we'll show. Titanic.
I mean, I know airlines, that's the word, they're very careful not to screen aircraft crashes.
Yeah.
on board for very good reason.
Yeah.
I think that's a sick joke. I mean, are they suggesting that's instigated by the drunken clowns?
I don't know if he's connecting the drunken clowns to it or not, but quite surreal to be on that ship with obnoxious drunken. It's completely out of The Simpsons, that, isn't it?
That really, truly is. Maybe it was a theme night, a carnival theme night, drunken clowns.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Did you, talking about flights, did you hear that story? I think it was on Have I Got News For You, about that pilot flying from America to China who had to turn the plane around, big passenger plane, had to turn it around 2 hours into the flight and go back to America.
No.
Can you guess why?
Illness?
No. He'd forgot his passport.
Oh, no. No. That is so embarrassing.
Can you imagine? Sorry, we're going to have to go back. I forgot my passport. We're 2 hours in.
Oh, no. Oh, I bet he got into trouble.
I bet he did.
Oh, no.
Well, Ben, in conclusion, given around 30 million people take cruise ship holidays every year, I think the chances of you having a ghost encounter, being on board a cursed ship, or even getting murdered are extremely low. I was thinking about this when I was working. The other thing I'd thought about is I wonder if these stories have such an impact because, unlike a haunted hotel or even the haunted prison, the Shepton Mallet prison we went to, you can always just leave. But you can't if you're on a ship in the middle of the ocean, can you?
No.
What can you do? You're trapped.
Yeah. No, maybe I don't want to go on a cruise ship as much as I thought I might do. And anyway, my partner doesn't want to go on a cruise ship anyway, so we'll stay off the cursed vessels.
Yeah, stay off the cursed vessels for now and don't get the lift.
No, exactly. Well, coming up next week, it's funny because you get a lot of kids on cruises.
Right.
I am looking at what is so paranormal about children, including I've discovered a brilliant source which is exclusively sightings by children of peculiar cryptids.
Oh, great.
And I've been able to back it up by other sightings of similar things in the same place by adults. So, but there's something peculiar about children, and we'll be looking into that next week.
Yeah, certainly is. Okay, good. All right. Well, look, we look forward to seeing you next week. If you enjoy what we do, come and join us for Ben and Peter's Extra Scoop, our exclusive Patreon episode. Come join us now. Yeah, and
patreon.com/TQM pod.
Thank you, I forgot that bit. Also, tell a friend about us if you can. That'd be great.
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Good. See you next week.
See you next week. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Are you the quantum mechanics?